Oh baby, if you're ready to add more charm, elegance, and romance to your rental, then sit on down because I've got some ideas. Welcome back to Laugh Cry DIY. I am Katie, and today's episode is for my traditional girls, my grand millennials, my gals who want to live in a French chateau but actually live in a studio apartment. But just because you live in a rental or a small home or you're on a small budget doesn't mean you can't live and die like Marie Antoinette. So today I'm going to share 10 tips along with inspiration images of ideas you can use to add more charm and character and romance to your life. These are a lot of ideas drawn from like historical references to really make you feel like you're living like old money elegance. They don't require paint, they don't require wallpaper, and many of them are simple projects you can tackle during the weekend or decor pieces you can keep an eye out for next time you're thrifting. So let's embrace the aristocracy and dive into tip 1, which is a canopy bed. Contrary to popular belief, people always think you need really grand, large rooms to have a canopy bed, but they're actually great in small spaces when you want to feel more enclosed or you want to create a more distinct space. Now, obviously, there are a few options here. You can go with a traditional 4-corner canopy bed, so it's already built in, or you can do a similar thing by hanging rods from the ceiling and draping fabric that way. I also love this draping style, which you can do side to side. It's really simple and elegant and easy, and it doesn't take as much commitment as like a full canopy moment does. And of course, you can play with pattern and placement of the fabric. Like I love how they hung this one off of a bracket. But if you're not someone who wants a lot of fabric all the way around, I also like this version where you sort of switch the orientation and it's draped almost like a massive headboard. This way you get a canopy feel without feeling super claustrophobic if you don't like fighting through a bunch of curtains to get in and out of bed. And again, you can play with the color and pattern and texture of the material, depending on the kind of vibe you're going for. And that could range from like light, sheer, wispy curtains to like dramatic velvet and brocade. Whether you get a canopy bed or you DIY it with rods in the ceiling, it's a pretty simple project that has a very, very big effect. And before we move on, I do feel obligated to say that if you have a canopy bed and a lot of curtains, please be aware of open flames around them. Okay, moving on to number 2. Gallery walls are something that we see in a lot of apartments. We've talked about them on this channel before, but there's a really fun twist you can do to make any gallery wall feel much more elegant and grand. And that is using picture rails. This was a very traditional way to hang photos, especially in the Victorian era, because they did not have drywall and nails to hang photos in. Instead, they needed to suspend them from the moldings in the room. So it's an old school way of hanging things, but it's really fun to see modern interpretations of it. They are also a really fun opportunity to get creative because you can mix up things like the silhouettes of the frames, the size of the frames, and even the types of items you're actually displaying. For example, here you can see they've included art, as well as small hanging planters and mirrors. It gives you so much variety, and you can really mix and match so you don't have to feel stuck with one configuration. You can also go more maximalist and eclectic. I personally like how the pieces here are so close they almost overlap. Conversely, you can do a much smaller and more minimal version. This is a really cool thing to do at the end of a hallway or somewhere where you have a really clear focal point. Now for hanging these, if you're lucky enough to have real picture molding, you can use it like they did here. Now, obviously, if you don't have the rail built in, that's okay. You can use a brass rod and chains to hang them, but they're really cool and charming and unexpected. And again, it really feels like the fanciest version of a gallery wall you can have. Now, while we're on the subject of rails, I want to talk about another type of rail that you might consider adding to your home. And this is one that you can easily buy or DIY. And that is brass rail shelving. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, so people refer to this type of shelving a few ways. They call it gallery rails, tipping rails. I just call it brass rail shelving. And functionally, it's meant to corral and keep things on the shelf, which if you live in an earthquake zone like me can be very helpful. But aesthetically, it's really just gorgeous. And whenever I see it, I feel like you're just like in the glamorous cabin on a ship or in an Art Deco bar on a railroad car. This type of shelving is especially great if you love open shelving because it adds a nice visual detail and the heftiness of the brass just adds a little something extra. Now what's cool is that you can buy shelving in this style or you can get kits to add the railing to existing shelves, and I will link some of those below. And when you do this, it totally transforms the vibe. Like, look at how just adding it to the front of these shelves makes it instantly more dramatic. And although you're meant to drill them in, conceivably, you could probably just command strip those in if you had shelving that you didn't want to actually drill into. Because really, We're doing it for looks more than function, but just an idea. This is another example of how it just adds a little hit of character in such a fun way. And you can do this in any room, but it looks really pretty in a kitchen or a coffee station. I also love it in a bathroom. And you'll see here it allows for both function and that cute little piece of art. It's really one of the simplest things you could do to pretty much any shelving in your home, but it's such a nice piece of dramatic flair that it just adds that much more character. And that, boys and girls, concludes today's obsession with rails for now. Let's talk about busts. Am I on a mission to turn everybody's apartment and studio into a hall of antiquities? Yes. So if you want to embrace more elegance and grandeur, statues, and especially busts, are a great way to do it. I've talked about my love of columns in the past, but I also feel that any sort of like Grecian or Roman bust is just a really fun little hit that can add a little something almost anywhere in your home. Of course, one of the most popular ways to incorporate them is in a planter. I love this one on its own pedestal stand because it feels like an even larger piece of art. I also love versions like this side table, which feels really, really bold. And I don't know about you, but I see like coffee tables with statue bases or glass tables with statue bases on Facebook Marketplace all the time. It's also fun to thrift and spray paint these a bold color. Oh, and you can also use planters in really cool and functional ways. Like I love how they used this planter for kitchen utensils, or here they used a bust to store necklaces. And I also love any sort of like pair of statues flanking a fireplace, but that's just me. I've actually spent years looking for matching cheetah statues for my dream fireplace one day. But that's for another episode. Let's move on from statues and let's talk about a much more rare piece of decor that has really fallen out of fashion but needs to come back, and that is valances. These are window treatments that are meant to cover your curtain rod. And I'm gonna guess if you're a renter and your place came with curtain rods, they're probably pretty simple, boring, and basic, and valances are a great way to jazz things up. For example, you can cover them and add a very elegant vibe and style with valances like this, and you can really play around with like shape and pattern and trim. Like this version here is so simple but eye-catching, and it makes everything feel so luxe and custom. Or look at how dramatic this shape is. You can also go super glam with this type of swag version, and you can even try a totally different texture. Like this is a scalloped wicker version of a valance, which is really cool and unusual. These can work in any room, but they can also be very cute, like in a kitchen with a little cafe window, or if you want to be next level dramatic, add them to a bathroom shower curtain. You would be surprised by how many gorgeous versions people have actually done in their bathrooms. Now, of course, you can get custom valances made, but you're probably going to want to DIY them to match your own curtains or whatever pattern you want. So I will link some tutorials below for you to check out. We haven't had a chance to do them on the channel, but maybe we will someday. Now, moving on, let's continue our grandma chic glamour tour by introducing a traditional, a timeless, and a classic print that can really work in any space, and that is blue and white chinoiserie. Most people are familiar with this in the form of vases, which have been around forever. But again, this pattern is so timeless, it really can kind of fit into any style. It's just a lovely little hit of a traditional element that can really honestly be interpreted in so many ways. Like I love this simple ceramic stool in a more minimal room. I also love the upholstery print on these chairs. I love it in this beautiful simple vase on a console table. You could also do it as a lamp, or try it with really small trinkets on a bookshelf or on a little tray. I added a chinoiserie inspired screen to the corner of a moody maximalist living room makeover just for a hit of fun color. You can also be super extra and do full chinoiserie wallpaper. I've also seen pillows and curtains and planters and just all sorts of iterations of that pattern in so many different objects. And you don't have to go nuts with it, but it's just so versatile, it really works anywhere. It's also something to keep an eye out for in thrift stores, especially if you see like plates or something like that. Those can be really cool wall art. And I guarantee you that now that I've brought it up, you're probably gonna start noticing the pattern more. And for that, I say, you're welcome. Now, speaking of things that I often see in thrift stores, let's talk about the OG of traditional design. And that is chandeliers, baby. I know so many people these days are more into modern design or farmhouse, and they feel like chandeliers, especially like crystal chandeliers, are just very old school and out. But let me tell you, baby, not only are they in, they should be in everywhere. And when I talk about chandeliers, I'm not necessarily talking about like giant Phantom of the Opera chandeliers that belong in a grand hall. Smaller, little darling chandeliers can add a lot of character to a room. And I think you should put them anywhere you want to feel fancy. They're especially gorgeous in a dining room, which is obviously a very classic place for them. I added a candelabra style chandelier to a maximalist dining room makeover just to bring a little old world charm to the room. Of course, they're very elegant in a bedroom, but they don't have to be that big. Like, look at this little cutie. It doesn't take over the space, but it does add a really nice touch. Conversely, you can be really extra in small spaces. Like, look at this chandelier and these sconces in this bathroom. It's overkill and I love it. I also liked the way they used one in this bathroom because it adds a hit of eclectic character, and honestly, because they've fallen out of fashion, I tend to see them a lot in thrift stores, and there's really cool things you can do with them. You can also tweak a chandelier's design. A subscriber to this very channel, Jennifer, recently shared a project where she turned one chandelier into two by trimming off portions and repurposing them. So now she has two gorgeous pieces that came out so beautifully. Also, chandeliers don't have to be hardwired. You can get battery-operated taper candles or rechargeable bulbs, both of which can provide beautiful ambiance, and I will link versions below. And side note, if you're scared of anything electric, consider a plant chandelier, which can be so dramatic and cool, just saying. Now, let's move on to something that, to be fair, I do talk about in almost every single decor tip video, which is mirrors. Because clearly, if you're going for an old world aesthetic, you're probably gonna want some beautiful, gorgeous, gold gilded mirrors. But today, I'm going to suggest a very specific place that you should use mirrors, which is often underused, and that is flanking your bed above your nightstands. This is a more unexpected and more unusual placement of mirrors, but it's so elegant and opulent. It's very like glamorous Hollywood star's bedroom. Like, look at this stunning example. These are great because these are ornate mirrors that complement the headboard, and they add an immediate symmetry, which helps the room feel more put together. Using symmetry, whether that is mirrors or chairs or sconces, is always going to make a space feel more sophisticated and kind of intentionally put together. But when it comes to mirrors beside your bedside, there are a few cool things you can do. Like, you can go really large and tall. You can see this one is so dramatic. This is also a good idea if you have a very dark room where you need to like bounce light around the space. You can even suspend them for more elegance. Again, like, think of those picture rails. Or you can do something without a frame, like just a very cool silhouette. Or you can even stack them like these double gold frames, which are also candelabras. What a dream. And when it comes to frames and adding more visual interest, it's really all about like the texture or pattern that you put on them. I have a video I did back in the day, I will link below, of jazzing up frames with like cheap supplies. So you can check that out if you have existing frames that you just want to make over. But I'm telling you, if you're looking to make your bedroom a little more sexy, mirrors are the way to go. Now, I mentioned the opulence and elegance of a Hollywood starlet's bedroom. And if you like that vibe, you can very much capture that with the classic piece of furniture, which is a chaise lounge. I often talk about ottomans and benches and lounges and poofs and just fun little areas where you can recline, because I like furniture pieces that feel kind of cozy and inviting, like you just want to like flop onto them. And a chaise lounge is that type of piece. Now, one of the common myths about chaise lounges is that you need a ton of space to have one. But that, my dear, is not true. Pretty much anywhere you can fit an armchair, you can actually fit a chaise lounge. And it can actually be a very versatile piece of furniture in a small space. Like, imagine this in the corner of your studio apartment. It immediately makes it feel like it's part living room, part love seat, part boudoir. I also love how they used one here for a little window seat. And look how they tucked this one onto the landing. I think that is so brilliant. I'm also a fan of a very bold and poppy chaise lounge in a fun color. I love this one as a bench too. And obviously you don't have to be as bold with your colors, but one thing to consider if you're looking for a more traditional vibe is tufting on a chaise lounge. Tufting on a piece of furniture immediately feels more traditional and elegant, so that's something to consider. And lastly, let's round out today's video with something that is so timeless and so elegant, and something that goes back way farther than you would realize. And that is Harlequin style flooring. Checkerboard flooring is iconic, classic, timeless. But I'm particularly partial to the Harlequin style, in which you're basically laying the tiles on a diagonal as diamonds instead of just squares. This is a pattern that can also fit into just about any style, and it can also be a visual trick to help a room feel larger. For example, I used a peel and stick version of this pattern in my very own galley kitchen to make it feel larger. And you don't have to stick to black and white. You can play with the color palette if you want more personality. You can also go with more neutral tones. It's great in a kitchen or a hallway or an entryway. And you can get this effect with peel and stick flooring, or make your life easier and just do it with a rug. You can do a large rug, or you can do it as a runner. They also have vinyl floor mats, which are cool for kitchens or bathrooms. And this is a really easy pattern to paint onto a rug. I'll link a few cool tutorials below if you're interested in that. And again, I love that it is just a simple pattern that is very versatile and very elegant and can be used in so many ways throughout your house. So that, my dears, is how I would make any rental that much more romantic. If you guys have more tips of your own, please drop them below. If you're new to my channel, I have a ton of playlists of other decor tips. And if you have any other specific decor tip videos you'd like, you can also comment those below. This is an ongoing series. It's probably never gonna end because I don't want it to. So until next time, I wish you more opulence, elegance, and inheritance. Bye.